When you first meet me, how much of a factor is my skin color? Do you see a white guy? Is that what you're seeing?
100%.
Huh.
Yes. From my point of view, when I was, in addition to those, what I felt like personal messages, again, because it wasn't anything written down, it wasn't a conversation. This is what the Audrey that I was kind of picked up and distilled, because there were a lot of messages, many of which I chose to not to ignore,
Mm-hmm.
at least consciously. But I think unconsciously in my world, and this is very true, I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but in my world, there are white people and Black people. All the other breakdown of the Jewish and all the rest of that, it's a very clear delineation.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the historical interpretation of the messages that are handed down generation after generation. And I have come to understand that just like all Black people are not the same, all Black Americans are not the same by any stretch. I'm coming to understand that all people who are not Black are not the same, but there's no real, because by the time you get up in the morning as a Black person, as a Black woman who hasn't given up, who hasn't succumbed to the barrage of all of the challenges, by the time you get up and you fully realize that you have to be better than anybody else in order for it to be considered. There's no time to be figuring out if you're Jewish, if you're Protestant, if you're whatever all the other breakdowns are.
Mm-hmm.
Because being Black in America for me has been a full-time job. It has been a full-time job to hold my head up and not absorb all of those stereotypical messages, and not to absorb them because they're already here, but not to act on them, not to let them be the drivers as I move forward. I'm not sure if that's the answer you were asking, but that's...
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of directions it can go, and that certainly is one that's very interesting to me. So you're saying that you have culturally assimilated a Black and white view, and you have worked very hard to overcome that as well. So it probably still exists on some level, but you've worked hard to overcome the notion of both that you should feel a certain way because you are Black, and that people like me who have white skin maybe have certain characteristics or are a certain way or feel a certain way towards you. You've had to work very hard to focus on the individual as opposed to think in terms of the group. Is that right? Or?
Well, I have had to work very hard to own my own importance, my own value. So when I'm out in the world and I encounter, like this morning, I went to the grocery store. I make it a point to, if I see a white family, to tell them that they have a beautiful family. If I see another person who's white, to greet them and say Happy New Year or good morning. Because although I'm not going to specialize and become an expert in all the different things, because then my day is done and I have not even done what I need to do to be Black and have some peace. So I just try when I go out in the world to connect to the humanity in the rest of the folks, and to hold my own head up as best I can and do the work that I can do to generationally not pass that which I consider it to be a burden, not what other people think of me, but what what I think of myself, I have discontinued any engagement with the media. So I stopped watching TV decades ago because it marginalized me in such a way. I have stopped engaging with mainstream newspapers and magazines because I felt marginalized. And so I just take my own interpretation and the way I see my children and the way I see my family, my neighbors, and I don't take it much further than that. If I encounter you, but because there are so many messages that tell Black people who they are, what they're worth, and how hard it is. And you just can't carry all that and get through your day in a magical way that I feel as a Black American I'm entitled to. Some of that magic, I might not have a trust fund, and maybe my folks, aren't doctors and all of that, but I start where I am. I remember once my daughter called me from school, and she was very anxious, and she asked me, "Mom, how do I catch up?" Because she's going to school with sons and daughters of vice presidents and neurosurgeons and Congress people. And she asked me, how do I catch up? And I told her, baby, it's not a game of catching up. It's a game of you establishing your worth where you are. Because catching up is a losing game. We cannot catch up. We must start right where we are. And that's real from this Black woman's living.